Hello, everybody. I am with my dear friend Keith Mitchell, and we were just talking about something extraordinary, and that's about being a student and being humbled by change and relearning. And Keith, what did you wanted to kind of pour into that a little bit? What was coming up for you as we were talking about just being a professional at something and relearning and just adapting to life?
Well, when you take in consideration the practices like meditation, yoga, I look at them and I teach them as a practice of mastery. And so knowing a little bit about something that you do on a consistent basis, like when you take in consideration all the things that we do, things we desire to do, want to do, like to do, what do we know about them? And so when you talk about levels of ability to grow, well, we're going to be very limited because we haven't even taken consideration of what it is we're doing and how to really learn about it. We've been told, and we run these scripts of what we've been told, what we see on TV, but we really never like dove into the fundamentals of what it is I want to do. And it's perfection. You mentioned what you're learning from the standpoint of developing your podcast, which congratulations on that. And these are just fundamentals that remind us in a sense of learning and being open. And you mentioned humble.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It is, and it's this like little reminder to stay open to change and not be fully needing to invest in one way of being or one framework. And it allows you to see the world differently, knowing that okay, I thought that I could only be doing this and only see my life going one way, and then life says, well, what about this way? And it's like, okay, never thought of that. And I think that is very it's unknown, it's scary for people, but it's such a beautiful space because that's where all the newness happens. That's where all the exploration, the finding yourself, right? I was just talking to someone last night about this. Like we go through life with these jackets on of religion, of family, of community, of creed, of all these jackets, right? Imagine putting on these jackets of all these layers, and our job is to walk in life, but taking them off so we can see who we really are versus who we were told to believe. And so walking in the framework of okay, this is why I did this, and I walked this way because I was told this. Now being open enough to receive this newness, now I can take all this old stuff off, but and then walk into that. But if I'm still carrying all these old identities, these jackets, I don't even have access to that. It's because it's so heavy. People are tired and bogged down because of wearing these ideals that are not even fitting and doesn't allow them to go to the next stage in their lives.
Yeah, and if I just for people who are listening to ground the information to make it more tangible, talking to a stranger, learning how to have conversations, how to breathe
Yeah.
in the midst of your conversations when you find yourself getting emotional, how to slow down your heart rate to balance your emotions, to stay open, simplicity, how to eat, why do I eat, what my purpose is for eating, training. And when you begin to realize and why, when you take in consideration our whole institution of education, of how we know it, is we go and find that one thing that we're supposed to be good at, and we focus on that, and we develop that. But then the rest of our life kind of is on a decline.
Right.
So it's
Right.
what's so interesting with football, what I learned in football, every phase of the game, from the warm up to even the pre meal, everything is practice.
Mm.
Everything is practice. And not only is it practice one time, that one year, each year we come back to it, we do it all over again. Practice the fundamentals. And I feel really in the makeup of the human in this dynamic, in this diaspora, we don't have that fundamental. We don't ever. I feel consciousness is right surpasses of man and woman. And when we come into this understanding, you can call it enlightenment, but it's really just understanding of what it is I'm here to do, what it is I've experienced. How can I calculate and reflect on what I've experienced to allow me to navigate in a way that I can get the better aspect or the winning aspect, I like to call it and consider it, of what I want. How can I win?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Speaking of
Mhm.
winning, when you were in the NFL, I think it was in Pro Bowl, was it 10 years? 8 years, 10 years.
Yeah, 8 years, 8 years.
Yes. So when you were playing, it was three teams. I think it was the Saints, Texans, and uh,
Jaguars.
the Jaguars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it learning new? Did you see humans behave the same regardless of what team you're on? Like the same type of mentality as okay, here's what it takes to succeed, regardless if I'm playing for the Jaguars, the Texans, or like these are foundational principles to just winning.
Yeah, what limits a team and its ability to win or lose, because winning is such a challenge. Just like in anything in life, it's a challenge to win. So it takes a clear communication. It takes a new culture. Culture is what the definition I consider culture is what you do. And so from that, what I do, is it constructive or destructive? And so in all facets of our life, even as I look at the completeness of, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but on the completeness of love, well, love may not be attainable for us in this part of our venture of life.
Yeah.
However, but if I can uh, create a concept of allowing everything I do, or majority of the things that I do, be more constructive to my development or my insight or my growth and development of my being, well, then
Mhm.
that can take me to the opportunity to love myself. You know, love is a complete concept, and it's. I feel in some cases we have to give ourselves some low hanging fruit to attain. You know, and it's just like when I take people off of or considering their changing of diet to not eat meat. Okay, if you eat meat 4 times a day, we'll try 2 times a day, or try
Yeah,
one or
absolutely.
two times every 3 days. Like, give yourself an opportunity to grasp the winning opportunity. And so when
Just
I developed on that, now it's
yeah.
more tangible.
And
You know.
to speak more into what you're saying, Keith, it goes back to what you just said about creating a culture. And it's the same way with me when I speak about eating vegan to people. I'm like, I didn't just start just like overnight. I started replacing certain things. Beef with turkey, quinoa for rice. Like I didn't just like, oh, all of a sudden like voila. Like no, wait, it went from white rice to brown rice to quinoa. Like it was an emancipation was a process, right? And I was going right into that. You had the privilege and the honor of staying with Dr. Sabi for some months. And I want you to speak to maybe what some things that you learned, foundational principles that helped you see your health and your nutrition from a sort of a science more so than an obligation.
Well, the first thing, my real epiphany with learning from a teacher like a Dr. Sabi, that is, it was a black man. I mean, count the black teachers that are men that you've had in your life, and we've had preachers who taught and read this biblical text that, we get into the esoteric talk. It can take us so far from where we are on this plane. So it's like it doesn't have a quantitative, like, we don't have a quantitative understanding of these things. So Dr. Sabi was someone who was a black man who could talk to me about something tangible, my health. And that was really the first time I've ever experienced that. And then I had a teacher who was a black man who held the masculinity. I mean, these dynamics we don't really consider it, but when we're in this space, these are healing elements because we've craved this, but we haven't had this. We've been malnourished of this, and even having a father growing up, my parents been married 48 years. But the fact of the matter is the man developing himself to know how to integrate this healing opportunity as he's here with you. Uh,
Yes, yes, of course.
it's all learning. And so in seeing these things, you're like, wow, these epiphanies are going off. And when these things begin to go off, what you realize is that begins to be the palette that's developed that opens you up to be willing to learn.
You brought your mother and your father. How influential, how special of a role did your mother play in your life, and how in what ways did you feel like she influenced you to be the man you are today?
Well, it's trial and error, man. The thing is that I love my parents, and we've cultivated and developed a relationship. But I had no clue. I think in this, going back to the burden that I feel, in particular, black men carry is uh, we in the dynamic of our upbringing. Someone plays the villain, someone plays the good guy. And so, in looking at the father, because the father is typically the one who doesn't speak the most, he's the
Yeah,
more the disciplinarian, and then the mother is the one who says, "Oh, baby's going to be okay." Now we begin to villainize that father because
yeah.
he has the
Wow.
discipline, but he doesn't come and say why, and that's never really even taught. So all we're like in a position like, do my father even love me? So that disconnect
I
happens.
asked
Go ahead.
my yeah, oh yeah, I asked myself that a lot. I was like, if you love me, why would you do that to me? Like in my mind, like even as a child, like I didn't understand. I'm like, when you love me, why would you do that? Like, yeah,
So,
yeah,
so that child growing up with a limited consciousness of man-woman dynamics, right, grows up with the mindset that he has to save his mother.
yes, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And it also creates what you'll find is, there's a term called misandry, which is the opposition of misogyny.
is that like the thing where you feel like you need to be the hero in people's lives?
So misogyny is the hatred of women, and misandry is the hatred of men.
Miss Andrew. Okay, 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 okay.
And so what I'm trying to get at is when this child is developing under this psychosis, this understanding of saving his mother and the father's the bad guy. Now
Yeah,
his approach to men throughout his whole life is that they're the opposition.
yes, gotcha.
You see,
Yeah,
they're not
hmm
only the opposition, they're the. It's going to create in some cases, a trauma, a PTSD. So when you're in that space with them, it's always a competitiveness. It's always a battle. It's
it's
never like
fear,
a
fear dynamic. Yeah,
well, it's not necessarily fear. It's going deeper than fear because fear, your life is not necessarily in jeopardy, but it's the fact of the matter that there's a confrontation that potentially
gotcha,
is right here.
gotcha,
And it's
gotcha.
our ability to shut down, not take this information this person wants to say, want to engage
Yeah,
with them and be
yeah.
kind with them. It's just a basic battle that
It's
happens.
a
It's a
yeah.
established.
I see
Yeah,
that person through a completely different lens than what I should. It's like I shouldn't partner with you. I should actually keep you away at a distance. And not having that healthy relationship says, okay, men, people that look like you, i.e., men, I need to have a healthy boundary because I don't know what you might do. And that's the opposite.
exactly.
Yeah, because then men can't come together and have healthy
Yes,
conversations because of
yes,
fear or
yes,
like all these preconceived notions that we built up. Like you said, goes back to I look at you a certain way, so that way I won't even open up to you, and then that creates a standoffish dynamic. Yeah,
yes. And that
yeah,
comes through the learning of a child in these predicaments that he's put in, uh, not knowing. And it's never been told, it's never an educational piece. We begin to identify with ideas that we have and it has no substantial basis, no premise. And we
yeah.
hold on to these truths and we live our life as adult men with these same truths, never detoxifying those things. That's why what you find with nutrition, detoxification is a lot of our thoughts. A lot of our emotions are really with the dis-ease that happens in the body comes from our thinking, the way we think.
Releasing the toxic thoughts, which cause the toxic thinking, and yeah, and then it
This is
spirals.
this is why I'm an advocate of when you talk about the Eastern terminology of no mind. It's a process to get to no mind. It's a
Yes,
process to get to eliminate thinking. If it's like fear, if fear has been part of my life for 40 some odd years, well, fear ain't gonna really ever go away. So what happens is I have to redefine my relationship with this concept of fear. So
hmm
when it comes to thinking, it's not that I run away from thinking or shut my mind from thinking. I must master my thoughts. So when I master my thoughts, then there's no mind because
correct.
now I'm in flow.
Yes, 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 yes.
Different.
Snap snake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting people to that process is the journey. Walking people back home. A friend of mine said that the other day. Like I think we're all just doing that. Um, what got you on your spiritual path? Like, how did you go from NFL pro um, to walking, from catching balls to now catching, the spirit of enlightenment? Like, completely. Where do you where do you think the shift happened? And like, yeah,
Well, because I was on the defensive side of the ball, I was more or less not necessarily catching. I was more or less knocking people out. That was my job. I grew up in a very strict household. My father was a very military preacher, so I grew up with that mentality, and so I was raised perfect to be in an element such as football.
yeah,
Um, but to be honest, also socially speaking, I feel we gravitate to things that we feel that are again the low hanging fruit that makes us feel substantial, makes us feel we crave to have attention, we crave to be loved and looked at in admiration. I feel, and this is what uh, uh, prompts us to do things. It's not good or bad. It's just, again, in the mastery of ourselves, we must just identify the moves we are looking to make and why we're looking to make them. And so, in that case, not knowing and growing into the shoes of knowing, uh, I chose football because, girls like athletes. I chose football because
yeah,
you have a teammate setting. So I had friends,
yeah,
and then when I began to be really good at, I was celebrated for it. And so, yeah, naturally, just like the mother raising the son, like, oh, when he's helping, do the laundry, she's celebrating him. Oh, good job, you can do it. Look at you, I'm so proud of you. That whole
yeah,
thing begins to compound and build because that's how we were raised. That's how men are raised in this case, like that. And
yes.
so, I became really good at what I was doing. And so, through my journey of attainment through sports. The body is only is the bones I have are no different. They're not Superman bones. The body can
Well,
only
you
take so
can't tell
much
the
punch.
kids that are coming to see you that Keith. They don't think that.
Yeah,
The kids that watch NFL players. I remember going to see my cousin Tony Brown. So me and you have such a similar background. I grew up in a football family. My cousin Tony Brown played for the Houston Oilers and the New Orleans Saints, and so I used to go and watch Warren Moon for practices. They used to let us come and watch, and so for us, we thought you guys were Superman. Like, and so I got into football. I'm like, okay, I'm going to the NFL too. Like, I'm literally okay. I'm like you. I got my whole identity from being a football player. Like you said, it was the girls, the attention, how teachers like, oh, aren't you a football player? And I'm like, oh god, like just the admiration and the kudos you get from being in sports. And like you said, you do have an identity kind of wrapped in that. So please continue. But we did look at y'all like super.
yeah. Well, to balance the conversation to the women out here, there's no big boned people either. So just bringing it back to a collective across the board, we're dealing with the same bones throughout. They're universal. So now my body says, hey, I can only take so much punishment in this existence, in this body, as you've taken care of it thus far. And
Mm.
so my body, my first season in Jacksonville, eighth season, went to take a hit or make a hit, and I ended up on my back, and my body wouldn't move. I was diagnosed with a spinal contusion. I suffered paralysis for about a month, and I had no support from the NFL. I had to figure it out myself. And not that I was even looking for support, but the thing is, it's like if you had blindfolders on and you're just kind of reaching in the dark for like what it is I need to be well without the traditional route. And the reason why I didn't go to the traditional route and immediately is because I had experiences with them. They wanted to cut on me for a hernia that I didn't have a hernia. I had a pulled groin. I'm like, what? So I'm like, and even with my neck, with breaking my neck, they were like, well, this is experimentation. I didn't want to be experimented on.
I'm not a lab rat. I will actually no. Yeah, I get that. I'm sitting here getting emotional um, because Keith, I would have been so angry, and I would have been so angry because I'm like, I'm giving you guys my life, and what do you mean, like what, like, and so for you to be able to like walk through that with grace, like wow, like yeah, wow,
Well, it wasn't grace initially. I've learned to be at grace because when I have the chaos within me, I'm carrying that burden, and I don't want that burden. My
Hmm.
goal is to just, as it is now, to this day, even to continue to go and make strides in a more constructive way, you
Yeah.
know, and those things that have happened to, I can't relive that.
Right.
I can't redo that, and I
Yeah.
can't dwell on that. I have the life that I have before me, and I want
Yeah.
to enjoy that peacefully. And so that's, I've worked through that process. This is why it's always all learning. So,
Yeah.
um, but in that journey, it was challenging. It was difficult. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I mean, there was, you talk about suicide, you talk about all the things that you could think about in the mind. I went through it for years, and however, the things that I gravitated to, luckily, I don't even say luckily, intentionally, were things that saved my life, whether it be the people that I would bring into my circle or the teachers that I would search all over the world, like from Layla, Africa, Dr. Sabi, to Dick Gregory, to the best yoga teachers around, to the ashrams in India and Nepal, to studying the somatic healing, NLP, for 8, 9 years, to take all the yoga certification, meditation certifications for so many years. It was to save my soul, save myself, you know.
And
And,
my question: did you know? Such a great, like, just absorb that for a second. Did you know that you were doing that while you were doing it, or did you realize it after it was happening? Because for me, I thought I was doing it just for myself, but I realized it was so much bigger than what I thought. I thought I was just getting information. Yeah, I thought I was getting information. I didn't think it was going to like change me like that. I thought I was just, oh, I'm just gonna research.
yeah, I think simultaneously it was happening because we're going through the process, but at the same time we're integrated in the process. So I'm having conversations with people constantly, whether it be my mother, uh, family members,
Yeah.
friends, and so I'm integrated into it simultaneously. And as I'm learning stuff about myself, I'm like, oh, that sounds like what I just experienced. Maybe not going into that detail, but I'm giving the potential solutions of what I did, and maybe they can consider it or implement it in their own way. So it was kind of, I was seeing that just flow through me. I mean, people call it a channel, people call it a vessel. And this is
Right.
what, how that makes sense, to be the vessel that it just travels, the information travels through you to the next person. I think it was more or less like that.
Mhm. I think that's exactly, I resonate with that so much. I think that it's not something that I necessarily understand. It's something that I've come to evolve in.
Yes.
Yeah. Evolve to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like your message now is to the world as you tapped into these different healing modalities, as you have, like you said, you have the certifications, you have the teachings for food with Dr. Sabi. What do you think now you get to do with this, and what are your plans now, seeing that you have all these foundational principles?
Well, what's interesting is, you know, it's that saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so what you find is when people identify you, it's like the ability to grow from their identity of you is like gravity. You're going against a whole different fundamental that we had never really been measured. And so when
Yeah.
they see you as a football player, it's what they kind of like, this is all you can do in their
That's all
mind.
you can do. Oh,
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. And so we're breaking those neural nets of people when I'm engaging with them. In a lot of cases, it's even a celebrityism in some cases. And so it's just coming to take all those layers away and to realize the information that I want to share with you, the reasons I
Not
would
as
want to
not
share.
not in the frame that you see me through the frame in which I'm presenting the information.
Yes. Yes.
I feel
So a
like
lot of people, go ahead. Yes. What did you
I
say?
feel like as a tennis, like teaching tennis for 12 years, I had to get away from the identity of that too. Like even, like it was this almost like affinity to like be that way and not even know like who I was outside of tennis. I'm like, okay, who am I now? And being okay with separating myself from that, and knowing like I am so much bigger than that. Like I'm that's not my only gift. Like, but you get so locked in because you're so good at that. You're like, okay, I'm that, and it's like, no, you're actually more than that.
Yeah, and even to make it simple, a little bit more simple, to us as we are when we're reflecting on ourselves, studying ourselves, as we see our parents, and as our parents see us. You know, you're still the baby. You know, you're not the man in their eyes. We're still biased to them and their patriarch and their matriarch of who they
Yeah,
are.
for
And
sure, for sure.
even as the things that they've told us, never challenging it to question it, did they do the research to realize to bring that information? So it goes twofold. This is why it's so important to have these reflections. I'm a big advocate of how I teach meditation is propose yourself the question, right? And you sit in silence to see if you told yourself the truth or not. It's a contemplative practice. Because
Wow.
again, as we can go and do this due diligence on ourselves, we have to be truthful as we see ourselves, as we see the world, and also as the world sees us. We have to begin to really, this is how we're going to be able to connect the dots. You know, the insight that we can gain from Life University to the realization of where we're wanting to take this learning and this experiences, not to just throw it away as if we learned nothing from the experience. We learned something from the experience. We should gather the information and realize how that experience is prepping me for my next experience because it will show itself again. Well, will you be ready for it?
Yes, yes, yes,
That's the opportunity.
yes. That's a perfect. I think we can stop there. Like that's amazing. Ah, that's so good. Like, yeah. Wow. Thank you, Keith. Thank you. Thank you.
For
Thank you.
sure. For
Thank you
sure.
for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing your time. If you can tell people where to find you, that'd be great. And I'll give you some time here.
Yeah, my website is keithmitchell59.com. My Instagram is keithmitchell55. I have a book coming out, the Mindfulness Playbook. That's some of the basic fundamentals of what we kind of covered today, but we'll go a little bit more in depth. You know, just it's just paying forward the life that I've gotten the opportunity to live and give some insight in a different way. And I love to simplify these esoteric terms to make them more tangible so we can have a direct implementation, like to use it right now, you know, because we don't have, you know, I'm an advocate of teaching a practice, not a hobby. A practice is something that you can use in your life. It's a fundamental tool that you can use it, execute it, and learn how to master it. This is why when you go to the gym, every repetition, repetition is how we gain mastery. You know, so you have to implement these things that we're learning. So my book is the mindfulness playbook, and it's how you can implement this repetition. It's actually solutions to if you don't or haven't experienced the problem or the situation will arise, and how I'm prepared, thought, speech, and action, what it is I can do to live the greatest version of myself to win.
I love that. I love that. Foundational principles for cultivating and growing a healthy life. I love that.
Yes.
Go
Yeah.
check out that book because I am. All right, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Continue to be your best self, and thank you for joining us again on Spiritual Talk with Gerald. My man Keith Mitchell has laid on us some magical information, and we're so happy to have you in this moment. So, thank you guys for listening. Follow us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, everywhere. All right, we'll see you guys
Nice.
soon. Later. That was dope.
Yeah. Hey, it was kind of blurry on your side for your visual. Does that matter?
I think it may fix later. I'm assuming.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Just checking.
I saw that too. Is it how is it you're on Wi-Fi or regular?
I'm on Wi-Fi.